Hello and welcome to Secure The Insecure, hosted by Johnny Seifert. This is a celebrity mental health podcast where I say it's okay to not be okay. And if you have the same mindset, then before we get to today's episode, please subscribe to Secure The Insecure whilst you're listening. If you're listening on iTunes or on Spotify, click that subscribe button, leave that 5-star rating and leave that review. And if you're watching on YouTube today, please also click that subscribe button and leave a comment and leave those 5-star ratings. It's so important we keep spreading the word it's okay to not be okay. So let me tell you about my guest today. Now, this is a bit of a different episode of Secure The Insecure as I'm launching the Secure The Insecure book club. And this is where I get to talk to some of my favourite authors every fortnight about their mental health themes in their latest novels. And for this episode, you're going to hear my conversation with Amanda Prowse, who after 12 years of writing books has written her best book yet, All Good Things, which is out to buy now. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome back to Secure The Insecure my friend, the role model, the queen of emotional drama, and author, it's Amanda Prowse.
Well, that was a lovely intro. Goodness me, thank you.
Well, you know you're my OG. You know you're my favourite.
No, and you know, it's just always such a pleasure to talk to you. I mean, you know, we should say that actually we probably have more gossip off the air, don't we? Just chatting and chatting. We could chat for days, I think.
Well, we do go to some amazing lunches. There was a time we went for a Chinese and you told me you do not eat duck pancakes. The duck pancakes came along. I got so excited. You go, I don't eat duck pancakes. I was like, what do you mean you don't eat duck pancakes? You're a friend and you don't eat duck pancakes. How have you ended up in my sphere?
Just one of those things. But I went hard on the vegetarian. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that's also true. Yeah, I didn't realise that at that point. But since then, we have gone for more vegetarian food. Now, look, we've got to talk about All Good Things. And what I'm going to do in this series is look at the mental health themes that come out of your book. But to get there, we need to understand what the book is. And it's interesting because you've written so many books over the past 12 years, and they've always been focused on one character, be it Poppy or Hitch, or obviously my favourite book, Theo. This time, this book has, I would say, arguably, 14 characters have all got their own journeys. And it's the first time you've done it like that all 14 have basically a book for themselves. So talk to me about what the book is and what the messages you were trying to get across in it.
Well, you're quite right. It's very different for me because usually I focus on one character and their situation. So it could be something they're trying to overcome or just their story, but often it will span a lifetime, you know, a decade, whatever. This book takes place in 24 hours. So it's a really compressed time frame, which is actually great. It's quite a pacey novel, which I liked writing, but also it's a snapshot of families. And the idea came to me, we actually went out for an Italian meal a couple of years ago with my family. And there was a large table just to the left of us, and they were screaming and shouting and the wine was flowing. And I just thought, gosh, isn't that wonderful? Look at that celebration. Look at that closeness. And I felt quite envious. We were having quite a quiet, low-key meal. But when I looked over, there was actually 3 people who were shouting, 3 people knocking back the plonk, and at least 5 who were sort of a couple on their phone, some who looked acutely embarrassed, and others who were just clearly almost distressed, didn't want to be there, you know, looking down, hunched forward. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. That dynamic. And I just saw it for a second and thought, wow, wouldn't it be great to be dining with that family? And it was kind of, for me, a really good metaphor that we never know what goes on behind closed doors, that everyone thinks the grass is slightly greener on the other side. I certainly did, particularly when I was growing up. And yet it's not true. All families are flawed. All families face difficulties. All families have to unite and overcome. Popularity is like a bit of a roller coaster at different times of your life. And I just thought it was a really, really nice idea to write about it because it's our truth, isn't it? And we're always talking about how we put, you know, Instagram and social media is people's highlights, but our reality is always very different. So I thought, right, I'm going to write about this seemingly perfect family, this seemingly perfect meal, but actually each chapter told by a different character peels away another layer, exposes more of the truth until by the time you get to the end of the book, you realize things are actually not what you thought at all.
And what's interesting, for those that don't know, you were 38, you had a son, you then met your husband, he had a son, you became a blended family. And so if you saw your family out and about in the restaurant, you'd go, mum, dad, 2 kids. But you had to bring a blended family together when your son was at an age and your husband's son was at an age that they were both teenagers already when they met. And so those stories within that, there's 4 very different versions of what happened, similar to your book, which if you saw it from a restaurant, you go there as a family, you wouldn't get that, would you?
No, and I mean, we are a family and we're a very typical modern family in that I didn't give birth to one of my kids, but I'm mum to 2 boys. and that my son Joshy would tell you all about his marvelous dad. He didn't father him, but he's his dad. It's, you know, it's very straightforward. And I think we're just representative of most families, really. I mean, when I was at school, I think there was one person in my class whose parents were divorced. I thought, oh, how exotic. I was very intrigued by it, you know, how does it work? And it was a real sort of like, I just couldn't fathom how the mechanics of their daily life worked. But now, of course, that's not the case. Yeah, there are many, many different forms of families, thank goodness. You know, whether it's two mums, two dads, you know, a multiple host of adults parenting, whether you're in care, whatever, you can still find family. And actually, our definition of family needs to change. Family are the people who have got your back, who are looking after you. They're not necessarily the people who gave birth to you or fathered you, or even your siblings, you know, your chosen family, your friends, your inner circle. It's a different world now. You know, I'm 55 and it's very, very different, thank goodness. And actually, that idea of being a nuclear family, you know, with 2.4 kids and eating cornflakes every morning for your breakfast, and the man goes off to work and the woman stays at home. I mean, thank goodness it's not like that anymore. It was a restrictive, very narrow way of looking at the world. It's okay also not to have that chocolate box image of a family, because it rarely exists.
Absolutely. And also, like you said, you can choose your family. You know, you're part of my family. You love my parents a bit more than you love me. A bit awkward, but you know.
It's true.
It is true. That is the problem. It is true. It is factually true. But also, it's that thing of, I go on a journey with you each year through your books as well on the side, that for that week that I'm reading your book, I get to know a bit more about you and feel I've come into your world that little bit more. And so, you know, 12 years of writing these books, and you've gone through that journey. You and your home life, your personal life, have gone also through a journey. What was the key message, apart from the grass is always greener, but what was the key message that you wanted to take away from having two families to look at this time around?
I think it's very much that you can never judge a book by its cover, even mine. And so very often it's important to ask honest, straightforward questions about how someone's feeling, about what they're going through. Because actually in the book, one of the loudest, happiest, smiliest characters is one of the ones who's suffering the most. There's a young girl in the book, Domino, who's 16. Her grandparents and her parents would tell you she's the sweetest, quietest, calm, studious little thing. And she's just wonderful. And it's only when you get to her chapter, you actually realize she's a, you know, a swearing, smoking, shagging being who's out there. And you think, oh my goodness, you know, the fact that her parents and her grandparents are totally unaware, that really scared me, because she needs them to be aware so that they can pick her up when she falls, or if ever she needs them. And it's okay to have that sort of dual life, if you like, until she gets into difficulty. And then who does she turn to? Never be afraid to ask deeper or wider questions, and never be afraid to actually reveal your truth, because that's how we will keep each other safe and how we keep an eye on each other.
And it's interesting when we look at Dom and the characterization you've done for her. She is that 16-year-old child who wants to be that adult. She's trapped in that child's body, trapped in having her family basically mollycoddle and suffocate her, and yet she just wants to be the adult, live in the adult world. And I think we were all 16 at a time where we were also facing that. We all just wanted to be the adult. We wanted that freedom. And now we're all adults, or you've got to that stage where you just want to be a kid again and be nostalgic. And, you know, I was having this conversation today with someone that I still talk about people and go, so you're in the year below me. Oh, no, you're 2 years below my sister. Oh, you're the year above that person. And it's like, I'm still trapped in that. I just want to be a child again. And yet you've got a character like Dom that wants to be an adult. And you've got this weird paradox, haven't you? That the kids want to be adults and the adults want to be kids.
I think what's really sad about Dom, most of all, is that she thinks her worth lies in how she looks. She thinks her value is in how attractive she is to other people. And there's a sort of a turning point in the book where that's questioned, and maybe she starts to ask deeper questions. But it just really distresses me that she's this beautiful girl with the world at her feet, and she sees her value in likes and ticks and comments, and it's not about what she can achieve and happiness for herself. So I hope there's some deeper messaging there. But actually, I think you've hit on something, because I'm 55, so I'm a lot older than you. And I find that when life is hard, when life is tough, and we're facing challenges, whether it's increased cost of living, whether it's grief, whether it's, you know, whatever's at our door that we're finding hard to cope with, that's when I most want to just, you know, those days when, well, I was very fortunate to come from a close, loving family where if I was feeling a bit off colour or something was happening, my mum would say, just go to bed and I'll bring you up a drink, and I'll open your window and we'll sit and have a chat. And I sometimes, even though I'm 55, married with grown-up kids myself, hoping to be a granny, but I can't say it too loudly. Even though I'm at that stage, I still think I'd quite like those days where someone just takes care of me.
I 100%. When you're ill, I just want my mum to come over with some chicken soup and just loads of. I remember in COVID, she bought Cocoa Pops and pancakes. I thought, oh, I'm just being that child again. I just needed that moment. We all need a bit of tender loving care. We all need that bit of love, and the best love comes from your parents when they just go that little step further than anyone else would. And it's amazing when they do that. So we've talked about Dom. Let's talk about Cass and his journey. Cassian is 18 years old, and there's a part in the book where he's getting so many messages from girls and the attention is all on him. And like you said, with the validation of the likes, but he doesn't really want that. And I'm quite interested in, is it better to have loads of attention or no attention?
That's a great question. I think it depends what you're going through. And it depends on what feeds you, and we're all just animals that need feeding in different ways. So I am fed by someone spending time with me. For me, that's the biggest investment someone can make, whether that is physically sitting with me, whether it's my husband holding my hand of an evening, whether it's a reader spending time inside one of my books. That is what feeds my soul. Someone choosing to spend time with me, because you can spend your time in so many ways, and time is so precious. So I think it is the most incredible compliment. So when someone says, I've read your book, it's not only the fact that they've bought a book, which is incredible, things are tight right now. That is just, for me, remarkable. But it's the fact that they've chosen to spend their free time inside my head. I find that the most incredible gift and privilege. And I think for a lot of young people, it can be in the sort of the reward you get from social media, or the high you get from getting a DM, isn't it? Is that the word?
That's what the kids call it, yeah, DM.
That's what the kids call it. I think it can be that, but of course that's very much an instant gratification. It's nothing deferred that you have to earn, and so the high is high and short, and then the low is possibly lower and quicker, which is concerning for mental health. One of the many reasons I think that so many people's mental health is out of whack at the moment. I think that's just one of the reasons. Because, if I liked a boy, I would have to tell my friend, or write a note, or pluck up the courage, or get the same bus as him and actually make contact. And it took quite a while. So you'd go through all these steps. So by the time he noticed you, which in my case he usually didn't, it was almost like you'd earned that response, but also you felt quite connected to them. Nowadays, I've even noticed with my own kids, I mean, they've both got partners now, they're both very stable, but when they were sort of dating, it was very much they would go and look at people's social media and know lots of things about them before they'd even met for a drink. And I'm thinking, how does that work then? What do you talk about? Because you already know, where they went to school and what they like and what food they eat. And it in some ways I understand we're a fast-paced, fast world that I very often feel adrift in. I very often feel too slow for the world around me. But also, I kind of feel we shouldn't be in such a hurry. I wish we've never had so many ways to be connected to so many humans with the press of a button, or the opening of an app, or the click or the blink of a camera. But actually, we've never been so lonely, because that connection is quite transient and it's not based on anything other than technology. And I can see how it can start a relationship. I'm not decrying that at all. But I just wish in this fast-paced world, there were ways we could all go a bit slower.
Social media is so dangerous to do with relationships. And, we talk about in your book, Bernie and Winnie, and the way that they met at a bus stop, and just how simple it was of, is there a bus? No, it's running late. Why don't you go and walk? It's so simple. Such a simple anecdote to how you can have that interaction and actually start forming a relationship.
I think maybe our expectations are slightly different. I don't know. I think I wasn't ever aware of feeling like I was in a race when I was younger. I didn't meet the love of my life until I was 38. And I'm very glad I did. And I kissed a few frogs on the way. But I wasn't in a race to be with someone. I wasn't in a race to tick off all those milestones of life. But when I talk to my boys, and I talk to their partners, and I talk to other people, they tell me that actually they've been in a race since they were at school. Mm. It was a race to get the grade. It was a race to get into that set, to make the team, to get to the prom, to have the trainers, to go on the trip, to get the place at uni, to study this, to go to... And they're constantly racing. And I'm thinking, just stand back. Just don't do it. Just let it all go past you, because I think it's the way to ruin. I think because you've got to literally, and it's an old phrase, but you've got to run your own race. You've got to do it in your own pace. And I honestly think that everything works out at the right time. My life was pretty ropey in certain ways, particularly financially, before I wrote my first book. And I often think, gosh, when Josh was little and we were really struggling financially, and I was cleaning offices and doing all sorts of horrible jobs, wouldn't it be great if I'd had the success I now have? But you know what? I now realise as I'm older that it came at the right time, because I sort of had something to write about and my confidence was better and it felt like the right time. And I do really think that people talk a lot about manifesting, and I think that's great. I think it's just really about singularly looking at one thing you need and want in your life. I think it's really positive, just as a way to order your thoughts, not necessarily because there's some mystic force who's going to grant your wishes. It's not like that. Although if anyone has one of those lamps, chuck it my way. But I think it's more about just getting your thoughts straight. And the idea that sort of the universe does sort of come up trumps when you need it to, it's a really much calmer, more pleasant idea. And it's a nicer way to live your life, rather than feeling you're in this endless competition. Again, another reason with so many young people, their mental health is failing. I can't imagine living under that level of pressure. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm 25 and I've not had a serious boyfriend. Oh my gosh, I'm 28 and I haven't bought a house. Oh my God, I'm 32. And it's like, it's crazy and it's dangerous and it's horrible. It's an unnecessary pressure. And I understand how we get there. And I also understand, for my generation, I'm a working class girl from an Eastern family, born and lived in a council flat. I could, if I worked very hard, earn my way out of poverty. I could change my life. Now, my boys who are in their late 20s have friends who are junior doctors, who are renting rooms in a shared house because that's what they can afford. How do they start a family? How does their life begin? And these are people who are in wonderful positions of having great, potential careers and have close families and friendship groups. How do you get out the blocks? I think it's a scary and dangerous time for lots of people, but particularly for younger people.
I completely agree. And as you said, you weren't ready to write your books that time. But also, when you were 10 years old, you had all your pelvic operations. That obviously changed everything for you because that set you back socially. You moved to London when you were 22 years old. That set things back for you. So you've always been on your very own journey. And you're right. And it's interesting now in your 50s that you can reflect on that time. Whereas when you're living through it in your 20s and 30s and you think the world's going to end, it only gets to when you're in your 40s and 50s. You can look back and go, I'm glad I waited. Or I'm glad I didn't have to go through that heartbreak because I might not have been able to live through it. And so we look at these families or we look at people in relationships, we go, oh, they're so lucky. The grass is always greener. You open that door, how much misery is in there? How much madness is in there? How much instability and toxicity is in there? But behind closed doors, that is. And yet you're not living in that world. So you're right. It's that relating people to each other. Just don't do it. Don't do it.
Comparison, I think, is one of the quickest routes to madness, and I'm certainly been guilty of it for a lot of my younger life. I can remember going to have tea at someone's house and thinking, oh, stair carpet, very fancy, wouldn't it be lovely to have a stair carpet? Oh, they've gone to New York on their holiday, this is marvelous. And it just did me no good. And I think it's only since I've got older and think, do you know what, I don't care what the rest of the world does. I don't care what anyone does. I just want everyone to be happy. I want everyone to get along as far as is possible. I think that's one of the privileges of being my age and getting older, is I certainly care less. But you never know. And actually the book is very much about that. So there are two families, the Kelloways and the Harrops. The Kelloways have that shiny house on the street with the new cars, and they go on a great holiday every year. I'm thinking a cruise like the one you went on, which was, I have to say, as a telly watcher, TV gold. I mean, forget those sunset pictures of you all drinking a cocktail. The bickering at the table, it was like the most brilliant scripted reality show I've ever seen, and I would pay to watch more of it. Just saying, it was fantastic. Particularly your mum, who I just adore. Kind of like, having met your mum, she's so warm and so wonderful, and to see her sort of wandering into stage left and going, oh, just want a bread roll, and there's been this incendiary sort of explosion between you and your sisters, and it's like, yeah, I read wrong. And it's like just calms everything down. She was honestly comedy gold without even knowing she is wonderful. You know, that idea that the Kelloways have everything, and the Harrops who live in that grotty house on the street, you know, paint peeling from the door, weeds in the garden, overflowing wheelie bins. You just assume that they have less and that they're less happy. And maybe they are in some ways. But once we get to the end of the book, my goodness, I know which house I'd rather live in.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the final question for you. Your book, All Good Things, Amanda Prowse, out to buy now. Talk to me about your top 5 good things. What, for you, Amanda Prowse, is your top 5 things that you go, everything's all right. This is the perfect day for me.
Good night's sleep. Oh my gosh, if I get a good night's sleep, which I regularly do, I just wake up and think how very lucky I am, because I know when you don't have good sleep, it can make such a huge difference. Health, you know, my health. Oh God, I sound like my nan. I'm turning into my nan, which isn't a bad thing, apart from flatulence. But I think, yeah, I think my health is you know, something I really value. Fresh air, walking, being outside, amazing. Having a cup of tea, watching rubbish telly with my husband by my side. That is my best and happiest place to be. And having people to talk to. I've had times in my life when I've been extremely lonely. And the fact that I now have a network of friends and family and my loved ones, that's everything to me.
Amazing, amazing. That was Amanda Prowse. There's so much vulnerability in All Good Things. Please do go and buy it from every bookshop now. It's so good, and learn about those mental health stories in more depth. And if you love hearing from authors of their favourite novels, then come into the Secure The Insecure Book Club. Next time, in the fortnight time, we're going to have Nicola Gill's Swimming for Beginners. Go and read that now, and then you can listen to the podcast and find out the mental health themes and then see if they relate to what you've got. And I've put in loads of Christmas novels as well to lead you up to November and December for those winter reads. Plus, in the Secure The Insecure library, there are episodes with some of my favourite authors, including Adele Parks, Jane Fallon, Tim Weaver, Annabelle Knight, and Nicola Gill, to name a few. And if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes, click that subscribe button, leave a 5-star rating, and leave a review. And if you're watching on YouTube, welcome. We're new here. Keep subscribing. We need to keep getting those subscriptions higher. We need to get your watch time longer. We need you to leave a comment, leave a review, and then let's keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay. So to do that, on social media, on TikTok, I'm at Johnny Seifert 92, on Instagram at Johnny Seifert and at Secure The Insecure Podcast, and on Twitter at Johnny Seifert. I'm sharing so many past teasers of your favorite celebrities with their little bits of vulnerability as they keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay. So welcome into the Secure The Insecure Club. Welcome to the Secure The Insecure Book Club, and let's keep spreading the word. It's okay to not be okay. I'm Johnny Seifert. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.